Hello, welcome to this edition of Digital Badge Academy's webcast series. I'm Jim Daniels, your co-host, here along with David Leeser, our fellow co-host. And today we're going to be wrapping up a five-part series on the Digital Badge program methodology that we've developed here at Digital Badge Academy to help organizations really implement high-impact credentialing initiatives. And today we're going to be focusing on phase five, which is setting the stage for success. Right, David?
Yeah, no, this is a really great one because now you're at the point where you can start to promote the program. You can start to put in place what your support is going to look like. And then you can start to say, okay, how are we going to measure this? How are we going to measure this against the objectives that we had set up in the beginning of the program?
Yeah, and that's a huge part of it. So maybe we'll just kick things off here. I'll pull up a couple of slides real quick. Okay, so as we mentioned, setting the stage for success. This is the final phase in the five-phase methodology that we've developed. And as David said, there's a huge part of it that is about measurement and analytics in that. And if we just jump straight in and take a look here, uh, I guess the simple way to really frame this is if you're going to launch a digital badge program and you want it to be high impact and you really want to, see success from that program, there's really kind of three big major pieces that are involved. You've got to support everyone that's involved in the program. That's issuers, that's administrators, and obviously your earners. There's got to be clear communication in place to do that. And you have to be able to measure what it is that you're doing and evaluate those measurements and the data that you get back to see what's working, what's not, and make sure that the program can scale and make sure that it can be effective over the long term.
Yeah, these are the elements that really touch people at this point, right? These are the elements that are literally where you're hitting the glass and reaching the people that are in the program, from the users to the people who are marketing it or issuing badges to the people who actually are your key stakeholders.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can really sort of sum this up in a really simple way. So there's sort of three key tenets to this, and that's as far as setting the stage for success, and that's enablement. So you have to ensure that there's understanding about the program, what it's in service of, and what people should expect from it. You also have to promote it, right? You may stand up a badging program and think, hey, we've got this. Maybe it's you're standing up a badging program that is specific to capturing skill progression within your organization. It's tied exclusively to the L&D function of the business, and that seems simple enough, but you still have to promote it and help people understand what it's about. That's going to drive engagement. And then, of course, as we mentioned, and this is a recurring theme in this phase, and that is you have to measure and see how the program's performing. So it's really important to have access to data that's being collected as part of this program. And there is a lot of data being collected. Interestingly enough, that also sort of gets to the question of what platform should I choose? What system should I have in place to facilitate the issuing of digital badges? Because that can make a difference in what kind of data that you have available, and then what you can actually do with that data to facilitate those measurements.
Yeah, and if you fail at any one of these things, it'll make your program more difficult to scale and to really keep alive. And let's start with the user support and the training, Jim. I mean, really, this is an area that I think people sometimes overlook. There are a couple different groups that need to be trained.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the first group that needs training, probably more than anyone else, are those individuals that are actually going to be onboarded as issuers in the program. So if you're a larger organization, you might have different functions of the business or that institution that are interested in issuing digital badges. So they have to be educated. They have to be enabled to understand, okay, what's the process? How do we submit, a new badge offering? What are the checks and balances that we're subject to as part of that? How do we use the system that's in place that actually handles the issuing badges and so on and so forth? There's obviously an administrative function that goes along with this as well. So whatever solution and platform that you have in place, there are going to be those that are responsible for administering that and looking after that platform. And then you have to have um, a level of enablement and support in place for your badge earners as well. And in some cases, even the consumers of those badges. A simple example would be an FAQ, right? So having some level of documentation that talks about, from a badge earner's perspective, that answers those questions. It might be anything from how do I manage my profile? How do I actually know if I've earned a badge? I mean, there's a lot of kind of common questions that you'll get as part of a new program from that audience. From your issuers, you'll get all kinds of questions about, how do I know what qualifies to or what's badge worthy, for instance. So you have to have some degree of enablement and training to help educate that stakeholder so that they're not surfacing things that are going to get rejected and not make it forward, right? So that would discourage those kinds of stakeholders, and you don't want to do that. And by the way, the last thing I'll say on this, the user support and training piece, this is kind of a continuation from what happens in some of the earlier phases. The difference here is that we're coming at it from really a post-launch standpoint or a production readiness standpoint. So there's some aspects of this that have to be taken into account as you get ready to launch your program.
Yeah, and one of the things that we did and we recommend is that you find a way to replicate this stuff. So whether you're putting the stuff in Box or Google Drive or SharePoint or whatever, or you're creating a little mini course in LMS. But if you record that thing on a lunch and learn, save it so you have a library, like you said, an FAQ, but you also have a library of all this content, so you can then scale a lot easier than having to repeat these things over. The FAQs, by the way, is a great idea, and because there are going to be a lot of the same questions going to be asked over and over again.
Yeah, and anyone that has watched the previous sessions that we've done on this 5-phase model will remember that we talked about establishing a self-serve portal, right? Which gets to exactly what you're saying. Anything that you create in terms of artifacts or assets that help any one of your stakeholders understand how the program works, understand what kind of benefits can be gained from it, whatever matters. Having that served up through a self-serve portal is one of the most effective ways to manage to that, and it also becomes administratively very easy to look after.
You may even want to consider badging the activity. So if you created a training for administrators or badge issuers or whomever else, and it's, let's say it's an hour long or 30 minutes, whatever it happens to be. But if you badge it, then they get to see the experience, because frankly, a lot of people that are issuing badges, they don't earn badges. So they don't really know what the whole experience looks like. So why not give them a badge so now they can relate to exactly what's going to happen in the process?
Yeah, and we know that that's important. We know that from experience because we've been on the end of things where building out a badging program, you do have issuers that are in that position where they're issuing badges, but they're not really, their role, what they do in the business just doesn't, fit into the realm of what badging is in service of necessarily in terms of earning badges. It's important, though, that they understand the full life cycle of what a badge program entails, right? So everything from not just, okay, what's badge worthy? How do I get my, suggestion submitted, accepted, get it configured and published so that I can start issuing it? But you need to understand what transpires downstream from that. How does, obviously the issuer is going to have a firm understanding of what it takes to earn it, because in all likelihood, they're the ones that have defined that earning criteria, but they need to understand it from the earner's perspective as well. It's kind of that user experience. And there's a lot of things that happen downstream What is the experience of an earner actually being notified that they've earned a badge? What happens if they, for some reason, aren't notified? Where does that badge live, right? Where does their profile of badges exist? So all of that's important for issuers to understand, even if they're not earning badges, and as well as how earners, the kind of behavior that is taking place once they have those badges, are they sharing them, right? Are they enthusiastic enough to let others know, what they've achieved and accomplished by sharing that badge out, maybe to their LinkedIn profile or a news feed or something along those lines?
So there's and there's a line in the text there about promoting and utilizing badges. That gets us into the promotion and the marketing. Obviously there are several groups that you have to market to, and I think a lot of people underestimate the need to do this and to tailor that message very specifically to what they're listening for, what they care about.
Yeah, exactly. And the kind of promotion and marketing that you push out there that's targeting the badge earner, for instance, that's going to look very, very different than the promotion and marketing type materials that you push out there, um, that are intended to appeal to the senses of someone who's interested in consuming what the badges represent, right? And you need to be communicating on a promotional and a marketing basis to all of these stakeholders. Same thing goes for like executives within the organization, right? They need to be made aware of things. And sometimes the promotion and marketing to executives it may just be in service of ensuring that program, stays relevant and stays funded, right? Because, higher up execs in any organization or within a education institution, they're going to want to make sure that if there's effort and hard dollars being put into building out and managing and scaling a program like this, is it returning some value? And a lot of times the way you promote and market to that audience is going to be through pulling some of those metrics through and synthesizing that in a way to show that value, to get them excited about it. And then of course, you know, anyone that is considered a stakeholder, you need to be marketing to them. And as you said, David, you do have to tune that messaging specific to those audiences. The last thing I'll say on this is that's not a one and done kind of proposition when we talk about promotion and marketing. Yes, as part of this 5-phase model and helping clients get a program launched, we want to focus on that launch level promotion and marketing, but that is an element of a badge program that has to be repeated, right? That's never ending. You always have to promote and market what you're doing.
Yeah, because the stakeholders are going to change all the time. So what you need to do really is you need to create a little bit of a project plan around that. One thing you need to create is a table that has, here are the different audiences that I'm going to reach. Here are the things that keep them up at night, or the things that are the business drivers for them. And then here's what my message is going to be around badges. So if you created a simple table like that, you would be able to say, you know what? The sales organization is accelerating sales, increasing license sales, reducing the churn, whatever these things are that they want to do, making sure that their sales reps are fully educated, or whatever. So marketing is going to have a different thing. They're going to be worried about, their social media influence that this is going to have. Support is going to be interested in, how is this going to reduce my support calls? How is this going to be able to increase my customer satisfaction? And then, of course, from a business perspective, from the organization, how is this going to reduce my attrition problems or something else along those lines?
Exactly right. And I'm glad you mentioned the sort of a project plan for promotion and marketing, because you do need a plan in place. And obviously, as part of what we provide within this methodology that we bring to our clients, we actually help build that out. And it's not just a project plan that says, here's what you have to do as part of your launch, but it's one that actually can continue to be leveraged and taken advantage of, downstream from there. And, so it's not only all of the stakeholders, how you need to craft the message, all of these things that you just talked about, David, but as you and I both know, it's also sort of from a cyclical perspective and from a maybe cadence would be the better word to use. You have to do this at different intervals, and sometimes the promotion and marketing um, and monitoring and analytics, and this is probably a good segue to talk about monitoring and analytics, can kind of come together in the context of, for instance, surveys.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Before we close on the promotion and the marketing, just one last thing on this thing is that I remember there was a study that was done. I can't remember if it was eLearning Guild or who it was, but it was several years back, where they asked L&D leaders how happy they were with their learning technologies, including learning management systems and things like that. And they found that there was a remarkable drop off after 2 years. After 2 years, people did not like the systems they were using. And so the same thing's going to happen here with digital badges, because guess what happens? The people that really deeply understood it at the beginning often move on to new roles. And so new people come in and they don't have the background or the history behind this program. You have to continue to re-educate them
Right.
because they don't understand what the history, why did we do this in the first place? And they'll come in and they'll say, I don't think we need to do this. Why are we having so many badges? All these other things that come up. You have to be prepared for all of that.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. And that gets into a whole thing, how do you keep the program fresh, right, in people's minds? You don't want it to go stale, and you do have to periodically sort of innovate around the program. It could be as simple as opening the door to new kinds of credentialing opportunities that, traditionally or historically you wouldn't have considered, right? That's one way. Um, I know in our case, when we were looking after, for several years, looking after the IBM badging program, one of the things was the visual taxonomy associated with all these badges that were being issued. And that went through probably about 3 iterations. I think it's on its third iteration as we speak right now. So, that's always a possibility. Do you have to look at, if you're going to be utilizing emblems and graphics as part of the visual representation of a credential using badging technology, how does that evolve over time? And so that's important to think of as well. So a lot of things that come into play there that really
Yeah.
help keep it fresh and top of mind for people.
Yeah, and so you have to remind people the history. So, but the monitoring analytics part of it, I think, is really, it sounds a little bit dull sometimes, right? That we need to monitor, but really, it's actually very, very exciting because what you can do now is that as you start to capture this data, you can look back to what are the reasons we created this program in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
and how is this data impacting that? We said that we were going to do these things at the beginning. What does it look like now? Do we have an increase in X and a decrease in Y? And I think, Jim, you've done a really great job with clients being able to concatenate data from different sources to be able to say, let's look at the data from the badge system we have here, but let's look at that against some other business drivers and be able to really make some sophisticated get some insights for the organization.
Yeah, the one of the more compelling areas in terms of the value that monitoring and analytics, having measures of success defined in terms of where it can deliver value is when you, especially if you have an ecosystem of employees and you're trying to drive skill progression and higher levels of competency and this kind of thing. You already have this huge data set as an organization about your employees, what their roles are, what level, they're at in their role, performance review data. There's just all sorts of employee demographic data that exist within the tools and the systems that human resources and talent management professionals are already taking advantage of. Right now, if you have all this badging data, which provides a really, really crisp way to capture where am I investing, where are these employees investing their time in terms of learning and education and upskilling, what kind of maybe is certifications they're earning, all these kinds of things. you can merge that both of those data sets together, and we've seen this ourselves, we've experienced it, and it just opens up this massive lens into the performance of your organization, performance that you can drill into down to a specific department, even to see how a specific department is performing. And if one department is performing at a higher level than another, is there a correlation relative to that the badging data can actually help you inform? I think there's an example that you've cited around sales professionals, I think, in the past, about how badging was used to kind of understand the performance of sales professionals. Maybe you can comment on that.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing about it is this goes way beyond the learning management system or any other kind of system of record because it's capturing it from all these disparate sources. Whether a person takes a course through the learning management system, whether they go to a hackathon, whether they have attended an event, or a webinar or something else that's been badged. Now you have all this stuff in a collective registry. And back to the sales, there was a great example in for a large organization we worked with that was having a difficult time understanding how they could increase their license sales in China. And we were able to look at the data to be able to give them a very crisp report that showed them who had what skills at what level in that technology in that geography. So let's say it's cloud in China. Well, we could see basically very crisply how many employees had skills at what level, how many of the business partners had them in that level, how many of the clients had it at that level. And we could then say basically, what, everybody's at the beginner level. We have 60% of our people that are at the beginner level in our partner network, and we're wondering why they're not able to close the deals. We need to get them to a more advanced level. So now in China, they can say, well, we have to start holding some more conferences. We have to start holding some more lunch and learns. We need to get out in the field with these partners and train them up. So you'll be able to provide tremendous business value with this data. So don't underestimate the value of the skills cloud that you're going to be building with this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think another really good example, and then maybe we can kind of wrap on this one, that's quite different from what we've talked about so far, is, the marketing impact of a badging program, especially a badging program that has visibility external to your organization, which most do have visibility on one level or another. And the reason why is because people who are earning badges, typically they want to share them. And one of the most common places they share them, for instance, is out to LinkedIn through the, LinkedIn newsfeed. They may, drop them into their profile, right? And we did some work in the past, and I've done this and helped clients do this, where there's literally a way to calculate the marketing value of badges being shared out through social media. So the typical way that you would market through social media conduits would be go out, and maybe it's LinkedIn or it's Facebook or whoever it might be, and you purchase ad campaigns, and impressions cost this much, click-throughs cost this much, and so on and so forth. Well, badges can actually create that same kind of brand awareness, right? Because they have the visual emblems, and perhaps your organization's logo is in it. And this would apply for both educational institutions as well as, companies, as an example, or organizations and associations, whoever it may be, right? You can gain a lot of value through the exposure through social media in terms of brand awareness and brand impression. And that all actually has real monetary value that ultimately costs you nothing, right? You're not having to go out and buy an ad campaign, but every time one of these badges gets shared, it's instant exposure, for your organization. And we've actually built a pretty, I don't want to say complex. It's not overly complex. It uses typical industry standard kinds of calculations, but we've just adapted it to the concept of badges being shared out through social media in order to kind of back into a dollar value in terms of marketing impact that a badging program can have for your organization. So that's another aspect of monitoring and analytics that has proved to be really beneficial.
Yeah, one last thing that just about that, and then we can go. But don't underestimate the value of building trust through LinkedIn with the LinkedIn profiles of people who've earned badges. Make sure that people put their badges on LinkedIn. Encourage them to do that because it builds trust. When people look at a LinkedIn profile and they see that somebody has a credential or some sort of experience that has been expressed with a digital badge, it builds trust. In fact, LinkedIn told us that profiles that have digital badges get 6 times more views than those that don't. So encourage people to use those badges in their social media promotion.
Yeah, I couldn't stress that enough. Interestingly enough, though, a lot of companies get very nervous about their employees sharing their badges out through social media. They get concerned maybe about, will the employees that we've invested in get poached by other companies and things like that. It's kind of a natural way to think, if you're exposing this expertise and different levels of competency about your employee ecosystem out through social media. But there's some misperceptions around that, and there's some truths around that I think are worth mentioning here. One, even if you implement a badging program and you're not able to, and you want to set it up so that the badges you issue can't be shared to social media, and some platforms do allow that, it's not going to stop those individuals for still promoting what they've accomplished. They'll do it one way or the other. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, the reality is, by placing trust in that employee ecosystem and encouraging them to go out and celebrate what they've achieved in a public way, actually makes those employees feel more connected to their employer. We know that through survey data and other kinds of analytics that we've done in the past. So you actually get the opposite effect by allowing and encouraging employees to go out and share what they've achieved and share those badges publicly through social media. They will feel it will drive a higher degree of loyalty amongst those employees, and they'll feel a lot better about what they're achieving and accomplishing because they have this understanding that their employer, values it as well. So just some food for thought.
So that's it. That's the stage 5 or phase 5 of our 5-step process with Digital Badge Academy.
That's it. All right. So hope everyone got something out of this. And obviously, David and I are very accessible. We'll pop up some information on how either one of us can be contacted here. And again, we hope this was valuable. And that's a wrap.
Are you looking to launch a digital badging program or improve an existing one? Look no further than Digital Badge Academy. Our highly popular online masterclass will help you gain the skills and insights necessary to achieve success. Enroll now and start learning today.